Display on. Avionics on. COM1 set to 123.6 MHz. COM1 standby set to 125.4 MHz. Transponder standby. Transponder on mode A. Transponder set to 5432. Transponder ident. Altimeter set to 29.98 inches of mercury. Heading set to 180 degrees.
Hello, my name is Mark Ellis from Stick and Rudder Studios, and I thought that I would take a few minutes and give you some extra detail on X-KeyPad and its use with PI Engineering X-key devices. I hope you enjoyed that introductory video clip that showed a pretty good detailed demo of X-KeyPad working with a pair of X-key devices, the X-K60 and the X-K80. So these two devices from PI Engineering, you're on the left hand side, you're seeing an image here of the X-K80, and on the right is the X-K60. You saw both of those in the demo video. Obviously the 80's got 80 keys and the 60's got 60 keys. They're basically the same form factor, and for all intent and purposes the same device. It's just that the X-K60 has 20 less keys on it. And these are a pair of really great devices, okay, that you could use with your flight simulator along with X-KeyPad. So what are some of the advantages of these PI Engineering X-key input devices? Well, first off, PI Engineering offers a number of different size devices. They have some that come with 16 keys, 24 keys, 8 keys. I think the two that you saw in this video are the X-K60 and the X-K80. In my opinion, those are probably the two best flavors to use for flight simulation. They also have a larger device, an X-K128 that's got 128 keys on it. Also a very good option, but you actually might find that economically you're better off with a pair of X-K60s or a pair of X-K80s if you really think you need more than 60 or 80 keys. Another advantage of these devices is they've got a shift functionality built into them that X-KeyPad supports. And this shift functionality effectively allows you to have double the number of keys. It's sort of like the shift function on your normal keyboard. So with shift you can define multiple sets of commands, one for when the input device is not shifted and one when it is shifted. The other unique thing about these input devices is they've got a red and blue programmable backlighting under each key. So each key you can program whether you want that red LED to be lit, not lit, or whether you want it flashing, and the same is true with the blue one. It's independent of the red, so you can actually have both the red and the blue on at the same time, and you get kind of a purplish hue underneath the key. All of the key legends are configurable. The devices are made up such that you can pop the keys off, and then there's a little clear keycap on top of the keys that you can pop off and slip another legend underneath them. And if you recall looking at the demo videos, the X-Key60, I actually had used transparent vellum to print the labeling for that. And what's nice about that is it looks pretty good during the daylight, but yet you can still see the black lighting come through during the daylight, and it looks really great in the evening hours. The X-Key80, I did that one using transparency on basically a black background, and the lettering came out clear. And that looks really great too. So there's a lot of options on how you can re-legend your X-Key device. And as I indicated, they come in different sizes, plus you can get different size keys. If you remember in the demo, the gear key I actually had as a double key. So when you get the kit, you actually end up with a double wide keycap that you can use if you want to have keys like your landing gear, where you might want that a little bit larger than a standard size key. Obviously, if you use that, you end up taking up 2 keys for one function. These devices have also got some really great flexible mounting options. On the back of the devices, there's a couple of screw holes that you can use to mounting your X-Key device to your cockpit. I actually mounted mine using a tablet holder, a standard tablet holder you can get off of Amazon or potentially at Staples. And PI Engineering actually offers a number of mounting options themselves, so that you can mount that either on your desktop or whatever you think is appropriate for your use of the devices. Now, these PI Engineering devices, you can use them standalone with X-Plane. X-KeyPad's not absolutely necessary, but I do think you get a lot of great functionality if you use it with X-KeyPad. So let's go through what these PI Engineering devices can do with the simulator just as a standalone device. First off, they're capable of acting as a game controller for up to 40 keys. And that, frankly, is just a limitation of a human interface driver in Windows, is that any particular gamepad or game controller can only have up to 40 keys. That said, if you've got a PI Engineering device, an X-Key device that's got more than 40 keys, you can program all of the keys as keyboard strokes. So even though you may only get 40 as a game controller, you could do the remaining 20 or whatever, okay, as a as keyboard inputs if you wanted to do that. The keys do support macros, so you can actually have multiple keystrokes specified for each key press. And you can control the backlighting, albeit without X-KeyPad, it's somewhat static. You could set, which keys you want to have a red LED, which ones you want to have a blue LED on, maybe which ones you want flashing or not flashing. But that backlighting would not be controlled by things that are going on in the simulator, and that's something that X-KeyPad will bring to the equation. The way you would work with these devices is you would simply map them to X-Plane commands using the standard X-Plane mapping UI, whether that be a keystroke or potentially a game controller button if you're using one of the 40 keys that can be programmed as a game controller. Now, one of the disadvantages of using these devices, particularly if you've got one that's got more than 40 keys, is those functions that you set up as keystrokes. One problem is if you've got multiple windows on your simulator computer and you're using other software like maybe a Pilot ATC or some flight mapping software or something of that nature, if those other windows in the operating system have got focus, then whatever keystrokes you're putting in on the X-Key device, they won't go to the simulator. The simulator has to have focus in order to be able to see that input. And that's pretty common. You'd see that true if you're just using a keyboard to drive your simulator. Now let's take a look at the kind of features that you'd get if you use this with X-KeyPad. And I think in the prior video clip, you should have seen most of this being used, okay, in the demonstration. So first off, what is X-KeyPad? Well, to begin with, it is a C++ plugin for X-Plate 10 and 11, and what it does is acts as an advanced driver for X-key devices, similar to what you might find with the SPAD.next for the SciTech panels, or the X-SciTech panel plugin that is used to drive the SciTech panels on X-Plane 11. X-KeyPad can directly connect up to 8 X-key devices in the simulator, so if you really needed more than one device, you can actually run 8 of them simultaneously. Because it does a direct connect and reads directly from the USB interface, it doesn't suffer from the loss of focus that you would get if you use the X-KeyPad device without X-KeyPad. X-KeyPad will also support that shift mode that we talked about. And I think what makes it really unique is it can support the control of individual key backlighting using logical evaluation of simulator data refs. And you saw this in the demonstration where, as you operated a particular thing, whether it be a light or an autopilot function or something of that nature, if there's a data ref behind that in the simulator that indicates whether that function's on or off or in a different state, you can use that data ref to create a logical expression to turn the red LED on, the blue LED on. Maybe you want the red LED flashing, like I did when you press the transponder ident, mode. So lots of capabilities that you can do with X-KeyPad to drive that backlighting. You also can control the LED flashing speed and the LED brightness using one of the settings in X-KeyPad. The other thing X-KeyPad can do is it can have incremental control over numeric data refs. This is particularly useful in the case of something that is being represented in a data ref as a rotary switch. Let's take as an example the transponder mode. You could have X-KeyPad so that it increments that data ref incrementally from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, representing the various transponder modes of off, standby, test, mode A, that type of thing. Now, granted, you can implement that simply by mapping your keys to commands, such as transponder mode up or transponder mode down. But with this numeric data ref control, you can actually say things like, I want it to do a wraparound, 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, and then back down to 0. Or you could say you want it to go up and down. So it goes 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, and if you press the key again, it'll go 3 to 2, 2 to 1, 1 to 0. Which gives you a little bit more flexibility and allows you to use one key on your X-key device to actually get a lot of capability out of it. Another fantastic thing, which I think you saw in the demo video, is the ability to enter numeric values and then set any variety of simulator data refs. Pretty much any simulator data ref that is writable, you can set by entering a number on the keypad and then entering it in. So things like your autopilot values, your altitude, your vertical speed, airspeed, course heading, all your radio frequencies, including your COM and NAV and ADF 1 and 2, altimeter settings, transponder codes, pretty much anything you can think of that's got a writable data ref behind it, you can set by entering that numeric value and setting it. And you saw that in the pretty extensively being used within the prior demo video. X-KeyPad also supports sending multiple commands to the simulator with a single key press. Sometimes you'll see this with some planes where they don't have, as an example, a command to toggle all fuel pumps on and all fuel pumps off. The DA62 is a pretty good example of that. They have a separate command for the left fuel pump toggling and a separate command for the right fuel pump toggling. So with X-KeyPad, you can chain those commands together and with a single key press, turn all the fuel pumps on. Another thing that you can do is you can drive which commands get sent based upon the state of a data ref. So let's take that fuel pump example. Let's assume for a moment that you had a third-party plane where they don't have a toggle command in the fuel pumps. It's either fuel pump 1 on, fuel pump 1 off, fuel pump 2 on, fuel pump 2 off. And which command you want to send is based upon whether the fuel pumps are on or off. So what you can do with X-KeyPad is you can reference a data ref and whether that data ref is a 0 or 1 or whatever logical expression you put in for it, you can send different commands. The other thing that X-KeyPad does, it supports configurable text-to-speech confirmation of a key press. You saw this in the demo video where I had some confirmation text-to-speech being done for setting any of the COM radio frequencies in the transponder mode. And that's completely configurable. You could go crazy with it and use it for everything, or you could use it just for a few specific things. X-KeyPad also supports the ability to extend its functionality through the use of Fly with Lua and Lua scripts. And what X-KeyPad does is it exposes a number of shared data refs that you can set, increment, and manipulate with X-KeyPad, and then Fly with Lua can look at those, and it could do a more expansive and more extensive logic, including things like controlling the backlighting, with Lua script if you needed to do that. X-KeyPad also has the ability to support different planes, and it does that very similar to the way X-Tech panels does, that for each plane that gets loaded, you can have a separate configuration file for it that X-KeyPad will look when that plane gets loaded and see if there's one specifically for that plane. This is pretty valuable because many third-party planes don't necessarily use all of the standard X-plane data refs or commands. They often define their own or their own unique ones, and this allows you to take your X-KeyPad configuration for a particular type of X-keys device and adapt it to whatever plane you might be flying. So what I'd like to do now is actually take a look at what a configuration file looks like. Now I'm not going to go through this extensively because there is a tutorial video that will go through all of the capabilities of this, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview of how do you configure X-KeyPad to drive an X-key device. So it's a simple comma delimited file, and typically you're going to have one for each plane type. Sometimes you'll find that you can get one configuration that will actually work for multiple planes, particularly if a plane tends to use all of the standard X-plane data refs. But to be honest with you, what I found in most cases is you typically got to have a master, and then you have to tweak it a little bit, for each plane. So it's a pretty simple layout. In column A, you simply have a text field, that you can put in what the name of the key is. Then you also have in column B a set of comments that you can put in. Column C is the X-key unit number. If you remember, I told you X-KeyPad can actually support up to 8 different X-keys units. So here's where you put your unit number in. If you don't specify a unit number, it assumes you just got one, and that's unit number 0. Your shift flag would indicate whether this row is being defined for what the functionality should be if the shift is not engaged. And if you put a 1, it indicates the shift functionality is engaged, and what do you want done with that key if shift is enabled. And the shift mode, the way it works is it's kind of like a toggle operation. You typically would map a single key to the shift functionality, or you even can have it be a keyboard key or something on your joystick if you wanted to toggle it back and forth between shifted and not shifted. The next column F is a optional logical data ref. If you want to drive your backlighting or your command selection based upon some data that's in the simulator, this is where you'd specify the data ref that you wanted to use. Let's take an example here of let's see, say the transponder mode. Here what I want is if the transponder is off, I'm going to say that I want bank 1, which is the red bank, I want it to be on blue. Pardon me, bank 1 is the blue LED. If it's equal to 0, that data ref, I want the blue LED on. If it's equal to 1, indicating that it is in test mode, I want it to flash. If it's equal to 3, that means it's on, and I want it, the red LED, which is bank 2, to be steady. And if it is in standby mode, which is mode 2, the numeric value 2 in that data ref, then that's basically that it's in standby mode, and I want the red LED to flash on and off. So that's the kind of thing that you can do here with driving that. There's also a thing here called a float scale factor. I use that as an example with the flap up and down switch. The flap handle is a ratio that goes from 0 to 1. 1 indicating the flap handle is all the way down, 0 indicates flap handle is all the way up. And what I'd like to be able to do is, based upon where that is, tell you, what flap percentage you've got deployed, or are going to deploy when you press on that key. Now, X-KeyPad, it does everything with integers when it's doing these evaluations, and it needs to be an integer because we do have the ability to do logic landing operations, which can't really get done on floating point numbers. So we've got this thing here called a float scale factor, which if you have a data ref that only goes from 0 to 1, you can scale it up, okay, to a full-blown integer. In this case, I'm going to always multiply that data ref before I look at it by 100. So now instead of the scale being 0 to 1, it goes 0 to 100, almost indicating like a percentage of the flap lever deployment ratio. 0% meaning it's all the way up, 100% meaning the flap lever is all the way down. Okay? Same is true with your command logic test. If you specify something in here, a logical expression, then that would determine which command, either a true command or false command, is going to get sent. And you might do something here like, let's see if we can find a good example of this. Here's the fuel pumps, right? So what we're looking at is if the fuel pumps happen to be greater than 0, indicating that they're on, then what I'm going to want to do is send the command fuel pumps off. If it's not true, indicating that the fuel pumps are off, then I want to send the command to turn them on. So this kind of gives you an idea of what you can do with an evaluation on a data ref to determine which commands you're going to send or not send. Each command can have an optional speech behind it. In this case here, I'm being able to put the speech out that says fuel pumps on, if I'm turning the fuel pumps on, or I can send the speech fuel pumps off if I'm going to turn the fuel pumps off. And again, this speech is completely optional. If you don't want to use it, just leave it blank, like I did in the case of the COM1 and NAV1 transfer options. Now the last thing I want to show you is this numeric data ref. Let's take a look at the ones for the COM radios. This is a situation where if you enter a number on the keypad and you want to use that key to set the value for that data ref, this is how you would do it. So this data ref, Sim Cockpit Radios COM1 frequency in hertz, is basically the data ref I want to write to if I want to set the COM1 frequency. And this happens to be in 10 kilohertz increments. Here I can apply a multiplying factor that whatever I enter, because I'm going to want to enter it in megahertz, but I got to convert it, okay, to 10 kilohertz increments. So if I enter 123.6, I got to multiply that by 100 to get it into the units that the simulator wants to have it in. So the way this works is if I type a number in on the keyboard, when I press the key for COM1, it's going to set that value. If there is no numbers entered, in other words, I haven't entered anything on the keyboard, then what it's going to do is execute this command here, which is the Sim Audio Panel Monitor Audio COM1, which is basically saying I want to listen to COM1. So a single key can act in two modes of operation. Either it can do a function, execute a command if there's no data that's been entered on the keypad, and if I do have some numbers entered on the keypad, then it will automatically go in and try to write to that data ref and put that value in there. Now in some cases, you may want to have a data ref work in an up and down type mode. Let's take the transponder mode as an example. In this case, I'm not going to want to enter on my keypad 0, 1, 2, or 3 to set the transponder mode, although I could do that. The way I want this to work is when I press the transponder mode, I want to have it increment up. So the min value for that data ref is 0, indicating transponder mode off. The maximum value is 3, which is the transponder mode totally on. And the way I want it to increment is up down, indicating that as I press the key, you increment it up to 3. As soon as you get to 3, if I press the key again, I want it to go 3, 2, 1, back down to 0. I I could do a increment mode called wrap, which is going 0, 1, and then when I press it again, it goes back to 0. If I had used wrap up here on the transponder, it would go 0, 1, 2, 3, and on the next key press, it would go back to 0 again. Right? So these are really great for effectively controlling those things in the simulator that are rotary switches. Things like the transponder. Some light switches are like this, where they've got more than one position on them. You know, the auto brake switch, or the the 737 very much works like this. And you also have a numeric speech variable that you can set here, that after I've done this increment operation, this can get evaluated and see what speech that I speak. If, and again, this is optional, once that variable has been set. So in my case here, I said, if the data ref ends up being a 0 after I press the key, I want to say transponder off. If it happens to be equal to 1, I want to say transponder is in standby mode. If it equals 2, transponder is mode A. If it's 3, transponder is mode C. So you can set the text that you want to come out, based on, in that. So that's kind of an overview of what the configuration files look like. And again, there is a tutorial video that goes into this in greater detail that you can take a look at. But I thought it would be worthwhile for this demo for you to just get a feel about what it might take, to configure an X-key device to work with varying planes. Okay, so where can you buy these X-key devices? Well, there actually are a number of retailers that sell them. But I recommend that what you do is you get them directly from this URL here, xkeys.com, X-keys, X-KeyPad.php. And the reason for that is I've worked with the PI engineering guys to put together a special kit. And this special kit includes a free backlight mask, which you can see in this little video that's running right now. This is a black paper mask that's got holes in it for where all the keys are, and what this really does is it helps to keep downplay the amount of bleed through that you get between the various keys with the backlighting. If you look in the demo video that you saw prior to this, all of the keys, both my X-Key60 and my X-Key80, had this light mask on it. And what it does is it really allows each key's backlighting to show up individually, so that you don't get too much bleed through from the other keys. And again, they've included this for free in these special kits, so I recommend you get it from here. And they'll do a great job of supporting you on it, and I think you really like the fact that these backlight masks come with it. And where can you get X-KeyPad? Well, you can get X-KeyPad or register a copy of X-KeyPad on stickandrudderstudios.com. X-KeyPad does come in a free mode. The free mode, or an unregistered version, allows you to operate up to 32 keys on your X-Key device. Beyond 32, you're going to want to have it registered, but it gives you an opportunity to kind of play with it, see if you really want to use X-KeyPad or not, or whether you just want to use your X-Key devices purely as an interface, the simulator without X-KeyPad. And if you think you do want it, then you can go ahead and register for a nominal fee, using this URL here. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I can tell you I've really enjoyed flying with my X-Key80. I used to have a bunch of SciTech equipment, and I basically disconnected it all and fly exclusively with a wide variety of planes using my X-Key80, and I really like it a lot. So I hope you'll try it out. I think you'll be pretty pleased with it. Thank you very much.